Welcome to On Cloud, the podcast for cloud professionals, where we break down the state of cloud computing today and how you can unleash the power of cloud for your enterprise.
Welcome back to the On Cloud podcast, where we get real about cloud technology. I'm your host, Mike Cavus, and in this special episode, we're taking a look back at 2024 and what a great year it was. It's been an exciting year in the cloud space, full of breakthroughs, challenges, and incredible insights. In today's episode, we're featuring some of the best moments from our conversations over the past year, sharing key tips, expert advice, and the most impactful trends that shape the cloud landscape. So whether you are a cloud veteran or just getting started, you'll want to stick around as we dive into the highlights of 2024. One of our standout episodes of 2024 explored the transformative power of edge computing with Carnegie Mellon's Satya and Deloitte's Rahul Bajpai. Together, they discussed real-world applications to interplay between edge and cloud computing, and innovations like edge-native applications and 5G. Here's a highlight from that conversation.
The cloud has strengths. It's very important not to lose sight of. First of all, data centers are like fortresses. It is the most secure place to put your data to perform a computation. And the cost per unit of compute is the lowest that it will be anywhere, because the economies of scale drive down the per unit cost. So in terms of longevity of data, if you need to put data in a place that you are sure will be there 5 years from now, 10 years from now, will be backed up, will be secure, and so on, where you can execute applications which do not have any of the constraints that we just discussed, that Rahul and I talked about a moment ago. The cloud is the right place to do it. So the goal is not to replace cloud computing by edge computing, but it is to recognize that they both have extremely important roles to play and to leverage their strengths to create end-to-end architectures that seamlessly combine their strengths from the viewpoint of the user at the edge or the cyber physical system at the edge.
Another standout episode from 2024 explores the exciting frontier of AI at edge, featuring Qualcomm's Atul Suri and Deloitte's Rahul Bajpai.
So like you said, Mike, the edge is becoming more intelligent. What does that mean, right? In the example that you gave, the edge always had digital technology, right? You had sensors. Those sensors were creating an output. Intelligence at the edge really means that we're bringing real-time data and analysis. And the purpose of doing all that is to make time-critical decisions in real time that will bring a further improvement in productivity. It will bring a further enhancement of workflows. It will make processes that, like you said in your example, that take 2 days, happen instantaneously. So this idea of immediacy, this idea of, computing and real-time data analytics driving additional performance and productivity gains, to me, that's what this whole thing is about.
Yeah, and the couple of things just from a use case perspective that come to mind, given that we have trialed some of those in our smart factory. One is real-time quality detection and sensing, which really allows, right, to get as narrow and as deep as we need to in terms of monitoring an assembly line, looking at errors in machine parts, right, in the form factor, or even looking at the thickness of a paint coat on the door of a car in a car factory. Being able to track this in near real time as the production assembly line progresses and creating that automated feedback loop or that feedback control that allows the anomaly to be detected, analyzed, and fixed without having a lot of manual or human intervention. That is the end goal of any predictive quality sensing and detection.
Next up is a clip from Knowledge Short episode where Jamie Sawchuk discusses groundbreaking innovations in climate mitigation from AI-enabled geospatial platforms to renewable energy transitions, and how they're fostering sustainable growth.
After the disastrous 2018 California wildfires, innovators began using AI-enabled geospatial platforms to mitigate climate risks and adapt to climate change. Think about the trees in our communities that are weakened by drought conditions. When the wind comes up, there's an increased risk that that tree blows into a power line and starts a fire. Innovators are now using AI and drone, LiDAR, and satellite data, essentially geospatial data, to identify the trees close to the power lines and take action before the tree falls on the line. At scale, California innovators are mitigating 85% of their wildfire risks before they occur. At scale, California innovators are mitigating 85% of their wildfire risks before they occur. They're using this same technology to drive 10 to 50% operational efficiencies and increase asset resiliency.
In this thought-provoking conversation, Abi Noda, founder of DevEx, challenges conventional metrics for assessing developer productivity and highlights the importance of considering developer experience and team dynamics.
If it's fundamentally flawed to be trying to measure engineering output, then what are other ways we can measure how good our engineering organizations are and how productive they are? And that kind of brought me down the path of, instead of measuring the output of what is produced, let's measure the environment. Let's measure the process. And if the process is optimized, then we can presume that the output is also maximized. And that is what gave birth to what we refer to as developer experience, which is really the conditions for effective and efficient software delivery.
Also, Roger Primo joined us this year to discuss reshaping the organization for cloud's third wave. He discussed the principle of hybrid by design and his philosophy of intentionality.
There are a lot of factors, but the complexity in particular got in the way of getting the business value out of those migrations to the cloud. And the real thought on this third wave of cloud is based on early adopters that have done this well, and they've been very intentional about taking a hybrid by design approach. That is the notion of creating platforms that span that complexity, that you abstract away some of that complexity and really can get to business value. Then intentional architecture really does have a series of different kind of technology and simplification benefits that are part of unlocking that value. And so we see that as critical because I think in a lot of different industries, the adoption of cloud technologies, the adoption of AI, now it's not an optional exercise. That to differentiate and win in your industries, you're going to have to do that well. And if you're doing that on a kind of poorly constructed kind of base architecture, the chances of success are very low. And it's really about helping our joint clients succeed in their digital and AI initiative.
Deloitte's Brian Campbell joined us this year on a Solo Knowledge Short episode where he did a deep dive on the what, why, and how of industry clouds.
When you think about the history of technology over the last 20 years, in particular cloud platforms, they've gone through an evolution from infrastructure as a service to platforms as a service, and ultimately to business outcomes as a service. And really the way that that last piece of the puzzle is being accomplished is by defining specific business problems, which when you think about the product, the commercial, the operation sides of many businesses, they're so unique to the industries they operate in, whether it be healthcare, banking, software development, oil and gas, that each of those different value chains needs to be addressed in a way that the business outcomes of that industry are solved and supported. So the portfolio of these industry cloud solutions that are evolving and being served up across the market is expanding exponentially, particularly given today's environment and, technologies like Gen AI that are increasing the pace at which these are developed. Some of what make them unique versus sort of historical solutions, they're business oriented, but industry specific.
So again, the needs of a healthcare provider are very different than the needs of a commercial bank. And the different business processes across the value chain that are solved, automated, increased efficiency by applying technology to those different areas of the business are oriented towards those specific outcomes that enterprise and that industry are looking for.
Take a listen to a clip from this compelling conversation with Salesforce's Param Kalon and Deloitte's Kurt Anderson on how APIs drive digital transformation.
One thing that we're seeing our customers do is leverage those APIs to drive a reusable architecture in the enterprise, and then do it in a way that you're using a code gen approach that is supported by AI. So instead of coding everything yourself, you want to say that I've got a catalog of APIs and I want to expose that catalog of APIs to my large language model to be able to create the outcome that I want to be able to create. And what that approach gives you is that the skill set of being able to code all those APIs together can be achieved, of course, but sometimes, it's hard to find the skill set. It takes a little bit longer time. But when you apply natural language capabilities to make someone who's doing it way more productive, you're able to hit some of that, gap and make people more productive. So that's one value that we're seeing in people saying that, well, once we build the underlying investments in components like APIs, we're now exposing them to many, many more developers who are able to leverage them. They could be application developers or integration developers. They're able to leverage them in the output that they're creating more effectively by leveraging a large language model.
This year, a good friend of mine, DevOps leader John Willis, joined us for a 3-part conversation. Here's a clip from the 3rd episode in the series on why and how to avoid AI anarchy.
And so there's been a lot of movement in general IT of how to sort of eliminate that sort of like these ivory tower people sitting who knows where are demanding that everybody do it this way. And, I've done a qualitative analysis for large banks where like these young kids will say, John, just find this person that owns this control so I can just have a conversation with them about how insane this control is. I mean, in large organizations, they're like, who owns that risk? Can't even be navigated. It's the companies are so complex and big that no one person could actually tell you, oh no, that risk is owned by this guy. Here's his location. Here's his number. Just call him. And why don't you have a conversation about how insane that risk that was developed 25 years ago.
The next clip is from the episode with Deloitte's Scott Buchholz, where he gave a primer on quantum computing. Let's take a listen.
But simply note that by and large, when you read about quantum computers today, those things are not currently capable of running production workloads. Depending on whose roadmap you believe, those may be a handful of years in the future. But the other thing to keep in mind is that quantum information science, a lot like data science, is a discipline that takes people a couple of years to master, or at least to learn, let alone start mastering. And as a result, you really need to think about getting started sooner so that you can try to shoot the curl such that when the hardware gets to the point where we can start running production workloads, that your quantum information scientists are ready to run those workloads, and that you have identified the problems that are tractable to those systems.
Google Cloud Next 2024 is always a fun conference for us to debrief about. The next clip features Bill Briggs, CTO at Deloitte.
So I was with some of the Google engineers yesterday. I like the framing they have, the three-piece layer cake of the model garden at the below. And obviously there's a big piece of Google's advances in Predictive Gemini, but also they're open to others, which is important. How do we think about the model building layer? And then, well, you said the agents. Yeah. And my new favorite word is agentric, by the way. Agentric. I'll be using that with some attribution in the weeks to come.
Our last clip revisits the episode with Connie Fan, Product Strategy and Analytics Lead at Google, and Deloitte's Dr. Abdullah Raman examined the growing relationship between generative AI and cybersecurity. Let's hear from Connie.
Across the Gen AI space right now, it really is just the core concept, though, that LLMs are not just generating text, but they are able to call an API. And so to one of Abdul's previous points of there's a lot of great threat intelligence out there, but to operationalize it is an entirely different question. To be able to securely call the APIs of your Intel provider, be able to extract from that API call what the IOCs or indicators of compromise, like Abdul was mentioning, for a certain threat actor, and then have the LLM stick that into whatever syntax for whatever investigative query is relevant to the tool that you're using to be able to do your day job, is like a very quick turn that was previously inaccessible. And so the crux of the question is that the best way to secure the data is to not touch it at all. And when we need to call it, we're calling it from the already secure API. And then the ability to do that is not just purely for the standpoint of securing the data, but really to be able to access fresh and timely data and sensitive data to be able to make that very useful in the outputs for various users.
That wraps up our 2024 highlight reel here on Cloud. I hope you've enjoyed these key takeaways and learned something new to help you on your cloud journey. Thanks to all of our amazing guests this year for sharing their expertise, and of course, thanks to you, our listeners, for tuning in. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you like us, leave a review, and subscribe. You can also check out our past episodes wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And you can always reach out to me directly, mkavis, Kavis, at Deloitte.com. Feel free to write to me with your questions, which we can address on future episodes. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you in 2025.
This podcast is produced by Deloitte. The views and opinions expressed by podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Deloitte. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice or services of any kind. For additional information about Deloitte, go to Deloitte.com/about.